What was the dumbest thing I believed when I was young? Well, quite embarrassingly, before I reached teenagehood, I was under the impression that sex was the act of just taking off all your clothes, planking on top of each other, and just waiting. Just waiting for something to happen. A part of me watched Dragon Ball Z and thought that some kind of fusion would take place. That maybe some chunks of skin would fall off and then form a baby, something like that. Imagine my shock when I found out that all you have to do is push your bellies together to create babies.
Few years ago, Pringle dated a girl who was a stage 5 clinger. One time she called up Pringle's parents' house looking for Pringle, and Pringle's dad told her that he'd gone to Wendy's. Unfortunately, Pringle's girlfriend didn't realize that Wendy's was a fast food place and jumped to the wrong conclusion. She spammed Pringle with phone calls. When she eventually got a hold of him, she immediately screamed, "Who the fuck is Wendy?" "No, hi, how are you?" Pringle tried to explain to her that he was just getting a burger from a restaurant called Wendy's, but she would not listen. They had a huge fight about it, and in the end, Pringle was forced to break up with her. He decided that he just couldn't deal with her severe trust issues.
Nixim usually goes to his friend Helbin, who is slightly older than him, for advice. One thing he learned the hard way was that he sucks with girls. One day, Nixim asked,
"Hey, Hellbent, do you have a good pickup line?"
Helbin said,
"Just pull down your underwear and say, 'let's fuck' a few times until they give you a blowjob."
That advice literally made him sit down for hours, wondering what mental condition Helbin had or what drugs he might be on. It was so cringy and weird.
I remember back when I was a kid, I was sitting in my bedroom around midnight watching YouTube videos, when suddenly I heard something in my kitchen. I remember that I immediately freaked out because my parents had left 3 days ago to go visit my grandparents for an entire week, and my sister was staying at a friend's house. I grabbed one of my knives and I walked into my kitchen to find it empty. I searched my parents' room and the rest of the house, yet I didn't find any signs of anyone. I was still a bit freaked out, but slowly I began to calm down. I went back to my room, I closed the door, I locked it for safety's sake, and right when I was about to sit back down on my chair, I heard these 3 incredibly loud knocks on my bedroom door. So loud I thought the door was going to break. I just froze, holding that knife, and I stared at that door. I don't know how long I stood there waiting to see if something would happen. But one thing was certain. I was so happy when my parents got home, and I never felt comfortable alone in that house ever again.
Emoji was 16 when he met a girl who was cute, giggly, and fun, so he asked her out. Emoji had no money, so he cooked bacon and eggs for dinner, but that wasn't the worst of it. Her mom stayed for the date. And Emoji was like,
What? Why is your mother on our date?
He was a bit confused, so her mother explained. Turned out she was actually Russian, adopted as a baby to her parents, and that she was really 9 years old. Well, she has some growth condition in which she has the body of a 15 to 16-year-old. The parents were completely understanding, knowing that Emoji saw a 16-year-old girl, which technically she is. She has the body of one. Her parents were quite understanding that he wasn't actually wanting to date a 9-year-old girl. Emoji and the girl remained friends for a while, but after some time lost touch.
When Doopy was little, her neighbors had cows in the fields near their house. But one day suddenly, they were all gone. But instead of telling her that they went to heaven, or they went to stay at a new farm, her dad told her that they died and were buried in the fields, and that they were now ghost cows. So for 6 years, Doopy thought there was a bunch of dead cows in her yard, and the ghost cows protected her when she slept.
The most embarrassing thing that happened to me while I was at work was when I had conversations with a friend via email. This was in 2010, when people actually used those. And I ended up printing out the whole conversation. This conversation went up to 50 pages. My boss ended up talking to me in the other office, and he was like, "Pringle, You better not do this crap no more. I swear if I see you do this, we're gonna write you up. After that, I never did it again, and I got freaked out. What's crazy is this almost happened again to me by mistake, but this time around, I made sure to press the cancel print button.
Emoji likes to be competitive with a lot of stuff, but her weirdest is to see who can poop the most. One time, Emoji's friend was over, and in the middle of the night, they both had to go to the bathroom. So they had a contest to see who could poop the more between the two of them. Emoji won that competition every time.
One time, Hellbent's class was getting ready for a big English test. They were about to begin when suddenly, a female student stood up and said there was an emergency and she had to go. When the teacher asked her what was so important, the girl said her hairdresser was going out of town. She said her hair was a mess right now, and that she only trusted it with Sandra. The teacher reminded her that the test was worth 40% of her grade, but the girl chose to leave anyway. This is why Hellbent doesn't understand girls.
I've done some pretty stupid things in the past, and one of those involved going onto Gaia Online, writing usernames on my butt cheek while wearing underwear, of course, and taking pictures of it for gold. The thing was, I was 12, and I had no idea that half of these people were probably pedophiles. But let me tell you, I was hella rich. It did attract some unwanted attention though, and I did end up deleting my Gaia. Was it worth it? Absolutely not. Spinal Palm's high school principal was the kind of woman to side with the popular students. Every year she bullied him and the other unpopular students. Her main objective, to get them to drop out or move. One day, a teacher was pranking a girl at the school by taking her shoes and setting them outside. The girl and the teacher laughed about it, and then the girl went to retrieve her shoes. When she returned, the principal ran in and snatched her shoes, yelling, "I saw those outside! Those belong outside!" The girl tried to tell her that they were her shoes, but it was too late. The principal threw them far. Afterwards, the girl ran to retrieve her shoes, making sure the principal was not anywhere around.
When Ghost Toast was in the 4th grade, he had what could only be described as a substitute teacher from hell. At first, she acted like this sweet old lady, but after a week, her true nature came out. Every day, she taunted students, slammed tables, and yelled, "Are you all deaf?" One day, Ghost Toast's classmate had had enough, so he said,
"Shut up, you old bitch!"
The teacher ominously told him to come back to the classroom after he had eaten his lunch. When Ghost Toast and his friends returned to class after lunch, they found the once brave kid crying in a corner. He had bruises all over him and looked like he'd gotten into a fight. The principal soon walked in and announced that the substitute from hell wouldn't be teaching there anymore. Apparently she had spanked this poor student with a ruler and forced him to write, "I'm a dumb butt," on all of his work. When he refused, she kicked him in the stomach and slapped him repeatedly. Ghost Toast is glad he managed to stay off this psycho's radar. Hellbent was having dinner with some work colleagues and there was a slight accident. He went to drink his last glass of beer when suddenly, gravity took over. He remembers falling, but nothing else. When he woke up, someone told him what happened. He fell backwards off his chair, smashed his head onto the table behind him, knocking that over, and his feet kicked forward, kicking another table over. He was dragged out the restaurant by his colleagues and remembers seeing at least 20 disgruntled patrons shaking their heads. Apparently, they still talk about it around the water cooler whenever Hellbent's name is mentioned. Doopy was sitting next to a friend at the walk-in clinic. Her friend was very ill and had to ask her to drive her there. The waiting room was rather full, and they had been waiting for a few minutes when she started talking about how nauseous she was. Before Doopy could get up and get her a vomit bag that they hand out, her friend ended up puking on the floor. No more than a few seconds later, a young kid seated next to her and went, "Hoodoo," and started stomping around in the puke. His mom seemed absolutely miffed, but Doopy and her friend had to fight to contain their laughter.
Andy was at a Wizard World Comic-Con, heading over to watch the Smash Brothers tournament. On her way there, she saw a guy dressed as Superman, wearing a kilt, riding a unicycle, and playing the bagpipes. As he rode by, Andy was rolling on the floor with laughter. She later saw the same guy doing the same thing, only dressed as Mario instead of Superman. Andy considers it probably the best thing that she has ever seen. The anime convention in Ladybot's town had a lip sync competition in the main area. One act featured 2 cosplayers, a girl dressed up as Bombshell Wonder Woman, and an unshaven man dressed up as Rose Quartz from Steven Universe. The man used all the right moves, from strutting around the stage to doing a full split in a floor-length dress. He even tossed off his wig in the middle of it, and naturally, they won the contest. Ladybot had her picture taken with him, which was a perfect fit, because Ladybot was a girl dressed as Steven.
One of the craziest things that Sid's ex ever did was argue about the clothes hangers in the front closet. They all had to be the same color. Not only that, but everything else had to be the same. Nothing could be different. She was unable to explain to Sid why the closet needed to be organized that way. Instead, she gave him a look as though he was supposed to understand. A big fight ensued. When Nixium was a kid, his friend had some pet chickens. One night when he was sleeping over at his friend's house, he waited for everyone to fall asleep and then went outside to the chicken coop. He took his shirt off, picked up a chicken whose name was Oreo, and held the chicken on his bare chest until it started scratching him and he was bleeding. Then he put his shirt back on, went inside, and never told anyone about it. It's unclear why Nixium enjoyed this so much. Maybe he was just really itchy and needed a good scratch?
Gergak was getting home late at night and his parents were out, so they got a babysitter. The babysitter was nice to his little sister, but whenever he was in the room, she was a complete bitch. So when Gergak walked into the house, he was wearing a scarf over his mouth and a leather jacket because it was snowing outside. The babysitter screamed and grabbed a chair and hit him over the head with it. He yelled and showed her it was just him, but she continued to break the chair over the back of his head. He had to get stitches, and for some reason, his parents praised her for defending herself against an intruder.
So, Andy Mations was in a park, and a random guy told her that he'd pay her $50 if she acted as if she went insane when she saw a fat male ballerina with a hairy body in public. At first, Andy Mations thought,
"Hey, this must be one of those YouTube pranks."
And she did as she was told. Then she saw a fat hairy guy wearing a ballerina outfit and one of those obey hats, riding a skateboard. After she saw him, Andy Mations screamed and acted as if she fainted and dropped her iPhone 5 onto the hard brick floor. But little did she know, more people were told to do this as well. One of them even took off their clothes and all that was left was his underwear and glasses, and he jumped in a fountain. All they got in the end was a group of teenagers laughing at them. At least they gave him $50 in the end. Or so Andy Mations thought. Until she opened the envelope to find only $10 and a note saying, "Can't believe you fell for that," written in an almost fancy manner.
One time when Talop was attempting to pass through airport security, he somehow set a scanner off. He knew he hadn't done anything wrong, but he was still shitting himself. They then asked him to step into a different scanner to check for chemicals, and that also went off. They then did a pat-down search and scanned his shoes, which turned up positive for explosives. Even though he knew he was innocent, he couldn't stop sweating, and after several interrogations, they finally came to the conclusion that it was just regular factory cleaning chemicals that Talop had used 2 days before. Oh.
The most unprofessional person that Doopy ever experienced was a gynecologist. She was experiencing some lady problems, so she made an appointment. The doctor didn't even bother with an examination, and even though Doopy was a perfectly healthy weight for a 14-year-old, the gynecologist told her that she was so fat that she should go live on a deserted island where there was no food so she could starve herself. He was completely serious and said that it would fix all of her problems. That's some pretty extreme advice for a vagina doctor. Who knows how many other patients he's given such poor advice to?
When Pringle was 14, he and a girl liked each other. He walked straight up to her and asked her out. He meant to say,
"Hello, you are beautiful. I love your brown eyes. Your style is so great that you must be rich and have maids. So do you want to go out?"
Instead, he was so nervous that he said while talking fast,
"Hello, you are beautiful. I love your brown eyes. Your style is so great that you must be rich and have AIDS. So do you want to go out?"
She immediately said no. Pringle tried to explain, but she said, "Fuck off, you cunt!" He took the rejection pretty well and moved on. Until 2 years later, when she dated his brother.
When Hellbent babysat his 2 nieces a few years back, he had to drive them to and from school and wherever else they needed to go. But the only song they wanted to hear in the car was Let It Go from the movie Frozen. Hellbent hated that song at the time, but eventually, he kinda grew to like it. He made the mistake of telling his sister as much when she got back. Now she promised not to tell anybody, but her friend apparently overheard them. The next thing Hellbent knew, a post proclaiming his love for Let It Go was trending on Facebook.
What's my most horrifying first date experience? Well, it was less the first date and more the girl I was dating. Although the first date was kind of crappy because I just had surgery on my foot, so I was kind of limping and didn't look very attractive. But suffice to say, we kept seeing each other after that, which was a huge mistake. Well, I guess the first red flag, and this was a pretty major one, was her smirking. Now, it wasn't just that she smokes, that's, a lot of people smirk. It was how she smoked, right? So, when we were walking in a train station, she was out of ciggies, and she couldn't afford to buy new ones. So, she found one on the ground that some random had been smoking, picked it up, and before my eyes started to smoke it. I wanted to projectile vomit then, right then. I could not believe it. There had to be 15 diseases on this thing. Ebola, malaria, fucking AIDS. And now I was gonna get all these diseases, thanks. That was when I noticed that she had a wedding ring on. Yep, that's right. She was fucking married. Yep, I was dating a married chick. Well, she did her best to keep it secret, but it was very easy to see through. So after that I was like, I'm good. I'm out. I'm good. Haven't seen her since, thank you Lord. And now I have a delicious fiance and I love her very much.
When Snoopy was a little kid, she went for a ride to the mall with her mom, grandparents, and sister. As soon as they got in the grandpa's car, Snoopy said, "Ew, it smells like old people in here." Snoopy's grandparents were a bit sensitive about their age, so they asked her what old people are supposed to smell like. Without thinking, Snoopy shouted, "Death and graveyard dirt." They spent the rest of the car ride in silence.
One night, James Shark was on the couch eating dinner and watching The Simpsons with his dad. It was business as usual until the phone rang. The caller ID said 911. James Shark had no idea why 911 would be calling him, so he picked it up. The voice on the other end said, "Hi, did somebody from this number just call 911? When James Shark said no, they asked, "Are you the only one there?" James Shark said his dad was there with them. "Okay, have a nice day," they said, and then hung up. Nobody ever showed up at their house to check up on the place or anything. James Shark could have been a murderer answering and giving BS answers to her questions.
I met this guy online, as many 21st century adults do, and we were dating for a few months. I thought we were happy. I deactivated my profile about 2 weeks into the relationship, and then I realized at the 3-month mark, I should probably go in and delete it. When I logged in, I got a notification that my boyfriend was still on the site and very active. In fact, he'd updated his profile just a week earlier. I gave him a call to ask him why he was still on the site, and he said, "Well, I was hoping you wouldn't find out like this, but I kind of want to explore what else is out there." So at that point, we were mutually single. Sid was 22 when he was dating this girl. She was really nice, but also really strange at times. On Thanksgiving, Sid and a bunch of family friends got together. While they all gathered at the table to eat, she looked rather uncomfortable. Sid asked,
"What's wrong?"
She just assured him that everything was fine. Well, when she went to go get the turkey, she came back with it, got on one knee, very rushed, and asked him to marry her. But it turned out that she literally broke her knee. She dropped the turkey and started crying. Sid didn't know exactly what was going on with her, but they literally dropped all communication after that day.
One time, when Ladybot was in a laundromat, a drunk man sat next to her. He complimented her hair, which she thanked him for doing. Then he began to talk about his desires of becoming a tattoo artist. Ladybot nodded and gave one-word answers, as not to be rude, but still let him know that she wanted peace and quiet. She was hoping that he would get the message and leave, but he didn't. Instead, he blankly said, "The police are saying that I murdered my wife." Ladybot froze and looked around the laundromat, wondering if anybody else heard. When she asked him why the police were saying that, he began rambling on about how he and his wife had an argument where he threatened to kill her. He went on to say how it was bullshit that the police weren't taking his side. Ladybot was still in shock about how much he was confessing. He told her to look at his phone for some reason and that she will be his witness in court. Ladybot faked a smile and looked over at his phone. He finally walked away, and Ladybot saw her opportunity to run out of there.
When Pandora first started at her current job, she needed some help with a part of the business she typically didn't deal with. So she walked across the building to the person she needed to talk to, and when she arrived at his cube, Pandora saw his dick in his hand and full-on porn on his computer screen. He tried to quickly close the tab and play it off like it didn't happen. She was so grossed out though that she just mumbled out an excuse and walked away quickly. He never looked her in the eye or talked to her ever since.
Now, if you know me, you know I love to draw, but I don't draw very well. But there was this gorgeous woman in this online gaming community I was in. And to top it off, she was a latex model, so you can only imagine what I was thinking. I'm still not sure what my logic was behind this, but I decided I know how to impress her, I'll trace a photograph of her. Thing is, even when it comes to tracing, there's still a level of skill that goes into that, and I kinda drew what looked like to be a human being, but the face, oh god, the face. Instead of a sexy latex model, it looked more like someone tried to build a girlfriend out of ground up ham and trash bags. But she was very polite and said the drawing looked fantastic, and that encouraged me to draw even more. Long story short, I didn't hook up with the sexy latex model, and she did everything she could to avoid me from then on. Also, those are the only drawings I've made that I've willingly deleted. I think I would have got better results with a simple, "Hey, you're cute." But the lesson here is don't draw people that you have a crush on. At best, it looks like it's psychotic and obsessive, and at worst, you draw like crap. I think I got the worst of both ends on that one.
When she was in 6th grade, Froggy went on a school campout for students moving up to middle school. Froggy and her friend Ramona were made to share a tent with a girl they didn't like very much. They decided to suck it up and be friendly, but the girl kept asking them to take her to the bathroom. It was a 2-minute walk from the tent, and they took her there 3 times. When Froggy and Ramona were about to snuggle up in their sleeping bags, the girl asked if one of them could take her again. Fed up, they refused and told her she had to go by herself. So she pulled down her pants and took a shit in the tent. They made her clean it up, but were forced to spend the entire night in the tent with her.
Emoji and her boyfriend both met as cosplayers. She was a fan of him online for a long time, but there was one convention where Emoji and her crush were both cosplaying, and they ended up in the same restaurant. Emoji kept turning around to look at him, but she never worked up the courage to go over. The next day, they ended up cosplaying the same character, so Emoji used it as an opportunity to start a conversation. After that, they started talking almost every day over Skype. One night, Emoji and some friends, including her cosplay crush, were playing Truth or Dare. Emoji dared him to date her, and he freaked out and said yes. They've been dating for 3 years since.
The dumbest thing Melissa ever did while drunk was when she was at a party. She put on a fake cat tail and cat ears, grabbed a shovel, and went outside. She said,
"Soil to the boil, bitches!"
Then she dug a hole in the dirt and sat in it. After a while, Melissa crawled out of the hole, walked up to a random guy and said,
"Kiss me for money, then I'll call the cops."
Melissa and her friends still laugh about that night.
When Dolan's brother was 7, his parents took the whole family and some neighbors out on a float trip. Dolan's brother had a bad feeling about the trip. He heard it on the radio that bobcats had been sighted in the area. His dad laughed at this and said it made it more of an adventure. The whole trip was supposed to take 8 hours, but 8 hours later they were still building their floats. It was getting dark and Dolan's brother, mother, and father became separated from the rest of the group. Night fell and they noticed hundreds of eyes watching them from the nearby forest. It looked like they were going to be a bobcat's dinner, when suddenly a man from the fire department emerged from the bushes and rescued them. Dolan's brother was glad to be alive. Meanwhile, Dolan spent the whole trip back complaining about a leech on his toe.
Hey, how'd you like a stupid leech draining all your blood? When Pringle was in school, he had 2 teachers that had a no farting rule. His senior year math teacher, in particular, was a total fart Nazi. One fart would get you a verbal warning, and the second one would mean instant detention. If a student dared to fart a 3rd time, that was a suspension and a permanent black mark on their record. One day, Pringle had leftover chili for lunch and turned into a farting machine. When he was sent home, his parents demanded to know what kind of trouble he got into, so Pringle showed them the official school documentation which said, "Suspended for farting." They were not happy.
Pringle was only 13 when he was walking around the park with his best friend. While hanging out at the crowded park, a man and woman began to run around naked while covered in mud and chicken feathers. They kept screaming, "Meat eaters must die! Meat eaters must pay!" Although Pringle found the incident so disturbing that it scarred him for life, his best friend thought it was hilarious. To this day, Pringle actually feels sorry for the couple since he believes they were drunk and are now probably very embarrassed at what they did that day. When Slaptam was 16, he started developing these weird cravings for sweetbreads. If you don't know what sweetbreads are, they're basically animal organs, particularly the pancreas or thymus of either calves or lambs. However, not long after he developed a craving, it had transformed into a full-fledged awful craving. He would start craving and eating chicken hearts, gizzards, cow tongue, pork intestines, and even chicken brains on some occasion. He's yet to try bull testicles or yak penis, as his appetite for them hasn't spiked up at the moment. These cravings tend to spike up at least twice a month. How he even started a craving for sweetbreads is well beyond me.